Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Not sure when you're listening, but we're glad you are. This is the First State Sports Debate, and we are doing this on Saturday morning of the championship boys game. And what a Friday night it was. The unified game went down to the last possession. The girls' game went into overtime. And we're going to talk both about those games. But first, we are happy to be joined by the Salesianum head coach, Taylor Trevisan. Taylor, thanks for coming on board this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, I know you just checked to see if you got any emails about the weather situation. As of right now, I assume tonight's 6 o'clock tip-off is on.
Yep, I've heard nothing otherwise.
All righty. Well, that's good. Let's hope it happens because, as much as we don't want anybody to be out on the unsafe roads, which hopefully they won't be, you're ready to play tonight. You don't want to wait and hope you get to play tomorrow, maybe not till Monday night. I don't know what the rain plan is.
I'm ready to go. Guys are ready to go. There's enough anticipation, so we're ready.
All right, let's first talk about the semifinal game against Howard. And for those that don't know, Coach Trevisan played at Sal. He's a 2-year starter. He went on to play college basketball at St. Joseph's, first as a walk-on, then as a scholarship player heading into his sophomore year. And so you certainly have experience. You weren't in the state championship games that they won, the two that they won, but you've got plenty of experience at playing on talented Salesianum teams. That Howard game, it ended up being 58-50. I just never felt it was that close. I just kept thinking, all right, can I leave yet? Can I leave yet? I mean, the game took forever, an hour and 53 minutes, which was a full 40 minutes more than the first semifinal game. We'll talk about the reasons why in a minute. But, what was the sense on the bench? You were up by 23 late in the third quarter with just a little bit over 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden they start chipping away. What was the attitude, I guess, is the best way to describe it, of your coaching staff and your players as that started to, I don't know if unravel's the right word, but as they started chipping away?
Well, we kept reminding our guys that they were going to make a run and not to get comfortable or anything like that. So the guys I think they were locked in. I think Howard did a good job of doing what they do as far as speeding up the game and pressuring us. I also think it was part of their plan to get a little messy and dirty. And we warned our guys about that as well. I wish it was handled a little differently by multiple parties, including our players. But Howard did a good job of doing what they had to try to make their run. And they did it. And we knew it was coming. And I think the guys responded really well, even though it got down a little bit lower than we would have liked it to. But the guys have been going through that type of stuff all year. Just having played Dover, I think, was really good. Experience to have just a few days before. So the guys were great, locked in. They at no point felt comfortable, and I think that was key to that not getting worse, those runs. So,
Coach, you brought it up and you kind of alluded to it, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about it. At the end of the third quarter, first of all, and I've said this all year, the level of physicality that is allowed to take place has seemed to ramp up, in my opinion. The guys are banging around all over the place. There was some hard pushing, and as you said, there looked to be near the scores table a really hard foul by a Howard player. The cameras did not catch what happened, and I know you were not happy in an email you sent us yesterday about the ejections. I'm curious what you saw and what you were told at that point.
Well, I think that specific play you're talking about was a culmination of what had transpired up to that point. I had mentioned to the refs in the first quarter, I said, if you keep letting guys kind of jaw and talk and clapping guys' faces the way you are, like, this is going to get out of hand. And sure enough, come the third quarter, there was a couple of different plays where I think there were some hard fouls. And I think our players did a great job of not reacting. And yet the refs kind of, I think, not to put this on the refs, I think they've done a great job all year. But I think they were kind of trying to rein in something that should have been reined in beforehand. And it ended up hurting us by a player getting ejected that I don't think was worthy of being ejected. And now he can't play today. He can't even technically be in the building, from what I'm told, which is just wrong for me, for a player to put in all that he has done and for it to be taken away from him because of a situation that could have been avoided. And I mean, if you're looking at that game, there's one desperate team during that time. And I'm not trying to knock anybody. It was just the score at the time. There's one team that is going to play more physical and try to make it that type of game. And Howard did that, and yet the refs didn't seem to take that into account, which kind of bothered me and still does. And, but, I think our guys still handled themselves pretty well overall. And it's only going to help us going into the day.
Now, just so our listeners know, and it's no secret because people will see he's not there, but Justin Hines was the ejection from your team. Xavier Richards-Powell for Howard was also ejected. I'm curious, were there any punches thrown? What was the reason for the ejection?
There was no punches thrown, but they both, I think the term they used was squared up with each other as an act of fighting, which by rule, I guess, is an ejection. What transpired before that, the tripping and the pushing, all initiated by one side, but yet they both got it. So it's unfortunate, honestly.
Well, I'm curious. You said Justin wouldn't be able to play tonight. I know you were going to appeal the ejection. Has that since been resolved and they have upheld the ejections?
We attempted to no prevail. There wasn't video evidence either to try to make our case. The stream at the time, that copy that we have, was actually kind of cutting towards the stands and then came back and didn't catch what transpired beforehand. So there's really nothing, we did everything we could. Nothing really came of it. We are still actively this morning trying to get the DIAA to allow him at least in the building to watch the game. Because by rule, technically he's not supposed to be there, which I think is just unfortunate. So we're still working to actually hopefully get him in the building so he can be there to watch.
Coach, let me ask this. Did he have to leave the building on Thursday night as soon as he was ejected, or just go to the locker room?
Yeah, he had to leave the floor.
And so, and I get that, if there are tempers, you got to get them out of the playing area or whatever. But I'm disappointed. And again, we're not here to criticize anything, but I'm disappointed that he's not allowed to at least be on the bench tonight. Obviously, he's cooled down, or whatever we want to call it. And he's not going to be there to instigate any problems. He is a senior, correct?
No, he's only a sophomore.
Oh, okay. So but again, you never know when he's going to get back to a state championship game.
This could be a once in a lifetime thing. And he's a great kid. I mean, he's never in trouble, never gotten into detention. He's upstanding student athlete and never really had any issues, and is actually known to be one of the quietest, softest spoken kids on the team. So
yeah, and I don't know, recently, and I've been covering high school basketball pretty closely now for about 15 years. I don't remember somebody getting kicked out or ejected, the technical term, out of the semifinals. And so this is the first that I realized that it's a rule that I knew he couldn't play, but I didn't realize he couldn't be on the bench. And so, I would think maybe something good that might come out of this, certainly not going to help the young man tonight, is that maybe the DIAA would consider changing that rule, that at least allow him in the building. So
I think it's just should be a case by case thing.
Right. If he punches somebody out, that's a different story.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, it was to move on from that, it was a sloppy game. 46 total turnovers, 50 fouls, 66 free throws. The game time, as I mentioned, an hour and 53 minutes. And again, sometimes that is just depending on who you're playing. And it's, again, not a knock against Howard. You led in a couple of those categories that I just talked about, turnovers in particular. So did you talk to your team about that? About, we're going to need to clean that up before we tip off tonight on Saturday? Yeah,
we mentioned it at halftime. We mentioned it after the game when coaches are watching film and going through stats. Like you said, some of it's a product of the game, some of it and the opponent. Howard, that's what they do, and they do a great job of it. Two is the score of the game kind of dictated a lot of how that played out. And unfortunately, we talk about as coaches to our team types of turnovers. A lot of those turnovers we had were dead ball turnovers, meaning, it wasn't a live ball where they're out in transition, and finishing on the break with odd man rush. So, they were good turnovers, if there's such a term, in the sense that they weren't getting out in transition. I think the transition points we won that category. I had this box score somewhere, but to have 26 turnovers and them only have, I think it was 8 to 10 transition points, shows that it was sloppy, and there's definitely areas we can fix, but they were what we would call a okay turnover. So
you did win the transition points 15 to 10. I've got the stats right here.
Coach, I'm curious about one thing. You guys, I looking through your box scores last night. You're an exceptional free throw shooting team. 13 missed free throws. And I wonder if we hear this every year. Do you attribute that more to the sight line differences at the Bob and players just not used to shooting in that environment?
Yeah, combination of things. I'm sure it's a combination of nerves, combination of 5,000 people, combination of definitely the backdrop. I always say it. I think one of the hardest places we played this year was at Tower Hill, who will be playing because they don't have it's open ended behind the baskets. So, it's a combination. I think being that this will be our second time playing there in a couple of days, that hopefully the guys will settle in. We are usually a good free throw shooting team, and so it always plays a key component to the outcome of games. So I'm hoping our guys respond well and make the adjustments they need.
Chris, that was something somebody asked me last night. Do these players get to come in and practice at all at the Bob Conference Center? And they don't. You literally get 20 minutes, and you got about 4 basketballs. And so you're only getting so many shots up.
Yeah. Speaking of things that I wish the DIAA would change, this is a new venue, a big venue, different just in all aspects. If both teams get a chance to have hour shoot around or something the day before, all you need would be fair. It would be equal. I'm sure there's a lot of coordinating to do with Delaware. As far as, gym time and getting on the court. But I wish they could do something because, we're not allowed on the court till 20 minutes before the game, and that's it. So,
that's something that I would think maybe, maybe your generation of coaches could push for. There's no reason you couldn't have come down at 1 o'clock, shot around for an hour. You go out to eat as a team, and you're back before your game starts. And it's, I can tell you the place was empty all afternoon because I popped over there a couple times. I work right near there. So, hey, listen, we'll get you out on this last one. Justin Mullen, hurt late in the game on Thursday night. Limped off, but had quite a bit of help, more than you probably hoped. But do you mind giving us a status? And if you don't want to comment, that's fine.
No, I'm definitely okay with talking about it. I actually just got off the phone with him this morning. He's been getting treatment the last few days, whirlpools and tape jobs and anything he can get. He's still hurting. So we're going to kind of test him out today, see what he can do. I would say it is a straight game time decision. It might even be see how he feels the first few minutes of the game and see if hopefully enough adrenaline kicks in. He was not 100%. He is definitely hobbled. And it's just going to come down to pain tolerance and how much mobility he actually has. Because even if he can tolerate the pain, if he can't move and do certain things to defend or shoot the ball, then it's not going to benefit us. So truly, he's doing everything he can to get ready for this. He's definitely going to test it out and give it a shot, and we'll see. That's all that information I gave you. I'm still, I don't know as far as how much he'll be able to give us, but he's definitely hurting. And but guys are ready. We've had the mentality all year that we have 10 guys that can contribute and ready to step up at any time. So guys are ready and know that they have his back if something goes wrong where he can't play.
Just to give our listeners and again, I promised you one more question. I promise this time.
I'm good.
And we appreciate
I
you
need
taking
a distraction because if I'm not doing this, then I'm going to be just, just thinking too much. So.
Yeah. I wonder, you don't play till 6 o'clock tonight, which is rare. Usually it's a 1 o'clock game on Saturday, but because of something going on at the Bob Carpenter Center today, the game was pushed back to 6, which is also a shame given the weather that's supposed to come in. If you had a 1 o'clock game, everybody be home before the snow hits, but we'll see what happens with that. But let's say everything's a go. Do you just meet your team at the Bob, or do you guys meet to go out to dinner at the school, or what? I mean, I know you go to the school. Yeah, that's stupid on my part. I know you go to the school, but do you go to dinner? You do anything like that today, or?
We not just for this game, but every game we usually try to come in. We'll be getting in today at about 1:15. We're gonna do a little team stretch / yoga just to try to get their bodies, ready after a physical game. We'll then have a shoot around for about 45 minutes where they can just get some shots up. Then we'll do a walkthrough, just kind of walk through some game plan stuff as far as what, we want to do against Tower Hill. Then we'll have a team meal at about 2:45, 3 o'clock. We'll relax and kind of just enjoy each other's company and try to take it all in. And then we'll get on the bus at around, I think we said 3:45, 4 in there and head over to the stadium.
Yeah, that's great. So again, we appreciate you coming on this morning. When you offered, I wanted to, take you right up on it, because it's a treat for us. It's a treat for our listeners. Our podcast will drop by noon today, so they'll get a chance to hear your thoughts before the game itself. You can see Chris Stevens. I know you know him from First State Hoops Report, and he told me he asked you all the questions he wanted answers for when he saw you on Thursday night after the semifinals.
He does a great job covering Delaware sports, and it's much appreciated, Chris, and you guys. Getting some news out there about our guys who are very worthy of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks,
we appreciate you coming on, and we wish you the best of luck tonight. We hope it's a great game, and that's no matter who anybody's rooting for, you want a great game, and that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, all right, Coach. Thank you. Good luck tonight, Coach. Taylor Trevisan from Salesianum joining us on game morning. Guys, that was a special treat. And we got Chris Stevens here now. He's been on the last few podcasts with the basketball, just a great contributor from First State Hoops Report. That's at FS Hoops Report. Again, you can follow me and Marty at Jon-Buzby No H, or at Marty Debate, and of course at DE Sports Debate as well. And guys, let me first get your reaction. Anything surprise you? Marty, I'll let you go first. That Coach said.
Not really. The only thing that kind of stands out is the Justin Mullen situation. I mean, when it first happened, I thought, he's going to hold him out. They're up by a bunch of points. And then, he sends us an email yesterday, and it sounds like things got worse for Justin. So I'm curious. I really hope, and this is, I in all situations, I hope for this. And I know like Seaford was missing a key player the other night. Yeah. You always want teams to be at full strength for the championship game or the semifinals. They played Tower Hill. They beat Tower Hill earlier. They were at full strength then. So was Tower Hill. It'll be unfortunate if Justin can't go tonight. I was curious to hear his take on the sloppiness situation, and watching the game, it's easy to see, and I watched it again last night. Howard got very desperate in the second half. Did anything they could to kind of scratch and claw their way back into the game, and unfortunately got a little too physical at times, and resulting in the ejections, which again, it's a shame that there was the camera just happened to pan away to a crowd shot at the minute it happened. So, he doesn't have the proof to show anyone that nothing happened. I was kind of hoping that in the interim time period, fans are recording everything all the time. Right. I was hoping somebody had a shot of what happened so they could clear this up. But it's unfortunate, because I'm guessing, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, for Xavier Richards-Powell, this will be a suspension for the first game of next season, since he's only a junior. Is that correct?
That would be my best guess, that he would probably be because I don't think he plays any other sports, because I know a lot of the Howard guys had football players on the team this year, but I think Xavier is just a basketball player. So yes, he'll probably end up missing the first game of next year.
So it's such a bad trade-off.
Oh, right.
He misses a random regular season game. They play Hodgson, it looks like, in the first game of next season. And of course, Justin misses the championship game as a sophomore. You hope he gets another chance to do it. But I do hope, John, you talked about this and Coach mentioned it. I really hope cooler heads prevail here on Dia's side, and they allow him to sit on the bench with his teammates, especially if there's no, when Coach said he was told that they squared up. I mean, my God, kids would be thrown out of school left and right if that was the way we handle things. So, I mean, kids square up at that age all the time. Right. It's kind of part of the process. So I really hope they change their mind on that.
And I have to agree with Coach that, of course, I was there Thursday night, and the referees, and again, I'm not blaming the officials. I'm not saying they did a terrible job. I'm just saying that this could have been prevented, because there was a lot of chippiness very early in that ball game before things even went completely left.
Yep.
Like they could have stopped it from going left probably midway through the second quarter. Yeah. But when you let the rough stuff slide as much as they did on both sides for Thursday night, it's going to come to a boiling point. And unfortunately, it came to a boiling point where, some guys got shoved, some guys got pushed. The two players that we mentioned squared up. And again, as Marty said, kids at 15, 16, 17 years old, boys in particular, that testosterone starts kicking in. Squaring up is what they do.
Yep.
For funsies, okay?
Yep.
So it's like, the referees could have stopped that way in advance. And then when you try to clean it up after the fact, it was just too late, and it's unfortunate for both sides because, as Marty said, of course Xavier misses first game next year. Kid that's a sophomore misses the championship game is very unfortunate, and I really hope that at this point, like Coach said, that DIA starts overlooking this type of stuff and say, okay, the kid never threw a punch, he didn't do anything, he just acted in an aggressive manner, he's not a threat, just let him sit on the bench, for crying out loud.
I can tell you pretty much with a guarantee that's not going to be changed today, just knowing the rules and the regulations and how the process that would have to go through, because that is a rule. And I believe it's probably a rule that is in a regulation somewhere that governs all sports in the DIAA, not just basketball, that if you get ejected from a game, you miss the next game and you are not allowed to be in the natatorium, in the gymnasium, in the football stadium, whatever it is. I don't know that for 100%, but I would imagine that is a blanket rule across all 19 sports, I think it is, that the DIAA has. And so that would be my guess. And so my guess is it's not going to be overturned, unfortunately, for that young man tonight. But again, something that they might want to consider overturning. Now, I'm not sure I completely agree with you have to handle it on a case-to-case basis, because then it becomes very subjective. Who's to say that player A should be allowed back in, but player B should not? And so I'm not sure that's going to be the answer either. And so, it's amazing when you dig into it and you start thinking about all the things and all the regulations and what happens. But do I hope that Justin Hines gets allowed to be on the bench with his team tonight? Yes, I do. Just like I would if it happened to the Howard kid and they advanced to the state championship, given what happened, or in this case, maybe what didn't happen. No punches were thrown. It was, handled very quickly, so quickly the camera couldn't get to it before, it was broken up. And so, but we'll wait and see what comes out of this. Sometimes rules are changed because of instances, and it's too bad for the young man involved. But if something is going to come good out of that, maybe that will get changed. We'll see. But
John,
again,
I got to tell you, after listening to several DIAA 6-hour board meetings over the last several months, if I never hear rules and regs again, I'll be a happy man after this season.
Yeah, but that's kind of what it would have to go through to get changed today.
You're right.
Again, I'm not sure which committee would handle it. I know there's an appeals committee that probably turned down this already, and I don't know whether they'll even listen to that appeal. But
well,
anyway,
real quick, John, I just wanted to mention, to that point, one of the things that kind of stood out in this last board meeting is they brought up the Del Castle Polytech situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was there was no mechanism for an appeal. It was basically the head of the board eventually asked, well, who makes this decision? And Donna said, I made it on my own,
right? Because
there is no mechanism to do this. Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah.
For an appeals process, there needs to be at least a board of 3-5 people, whatever, to make these decisions. But to find out that there really isn't a mechanism in place to handle this, you wonder what other situations, and I don't know, maybe this is one where it falls on Donna, and it probably shouldn't. It should be handled in a different fashion.
As far as I know, DIAA is literally a 2-person shop. It's Donna Polk, the executive director, and Stephanie Mark, who handles all the media stuff. And they do a tremendous job.
A thankless tremendous job.
Yes.
Yes, a thankless tremendous job. But at the same time, if we are going to have Delaware's high school sports, go to the level that we think it can, because we have some talented young kids here who deserve to be seen and, publicized, the Board of Education has to give them some help, because you just can't have 2 people overseeing a state with 60 plus high schools and 19 athletic teams. So you're talking about thousands of athletes.
Yep. No, I've said this before, and I'm the chair of the Unified Committee. So I've been enlightened as to what goes on in the DIAA. And the first thing I always say is everybody wants to blame Donna Polk. She makes no decisions. In fact, that decision you just said that we know she made about the Polytech Del Castle thing is one of the few decisions she makes. Everything is decided by committees and regulations and board members and a vote. Everything goes to a vote. You have to vote to accept those 24 teams. The committee takes a vote to accept them. I did the same thing with the Unified tournament. And so there's no question. And I think people realize that, if you're going to spend some money, let's get a couple more people in there to help Donna and Stephanie out, because they do a tremendous job. They have a third person, and I'm not going to say a name because it's coming off the top of my head, that handles a lot of the stuff behind the scenes as well. But it's a 2-person on, feet on the ground at the championships and throughout. And I guarantee you this today, Stephanie and Donna, they're probably going to work 3 hours today before they get to the championship game, and they'll be working on spring sports stuff. They're already in that, gear. That's just how it works. So I will never complain about that type of thing because
to that point, John, Donna in the meeting specifically said, we need help.
Yeah.
And basically the response from the board members was, good luck with that, because there's no money.
Yeah, but
I
mean, there is,
it has to go to the Board of Education, and they're like, yeah. So basically, the feeling around the table was, that's nice, but don't count on it.
Yeah, don't get me started on where we spend some money in education that you can tell me there's not money. All right, let's go to the last semifinal for the boys. Tower Hill, Seaford, 58-42. I would have lost a ton of money on this game, a ton of money. I'll admit. I said the only thing Seaford had to make sure of is that they had a backup bus, because the only way they were going to lose is if they didn't get to the Bob Carpenter Center. And my phone started lighting up about 3 minutes into the game when it was 10-2. You know, they just played well. The Shepherd twins, Dean and Dylan, they combined for 29 points. Davis Bland, number 15, he can shoot from inside and out. He was 4-7 from 3. Just an unbelievable performance by Tower Hill. You know, and I said this about both games. I said the teams that are going to win those games, because you had in both games, you had a Princeton-like offense and you had a Laker-like offense for the LA Lakers. And whichever team was successful playing their game, and that sounds silly, like, of course it was, Jon-Buzby. What do you think? That's the way it goes. But I think it held very true. Tower Hill and Sally shot the lights out. They played tough defense. And most importantly, both those teams held the other teams to one shot. Seaford was driving into the lane, throwing up shots that against other teams and other situations, they would get offensive rebounds and lay them back in. And that was not happening. They were getting boxed out on defense, boxed out on offense. It was just a tremendous defensive effort. And Coach Trevisan said the same thing. And you talked to him, I know, Chris, after the game Thursday, and I saw it. You know, he said this all started with defense. You know, forget our offense. We played one heck of a defensive game. Tower Hill did the exact same thing. They held Seaford to 36%. From the floor, 33% from 3. Neither team shot outstanding on the free throw line. That depth perception thing, I think it comes into turnovers. Seaford had 15. And so it was just an incredible performance by Tower Hill. And unlike the Sally's game where Howard kind of chipped away, that didn't happen at Seaford. They played better for sure in the second half, but I never felt that game was anything close. Chris, you were there. You talked to the coaches after the game. What were your thoughts on that game?
Well, before I begin, I would like to say that Dylan Shepherd, he thought I said the bus comment.
Good.
He said, so you're the one that said Seaford needed 2 buses. And I was like, no, I hit the Shaggy on him. It wasn't me.
You told him it was Marty, right? You told him it was Marty.
Yeah, right.
I ain't say who it was. I just said I didn't do it.
I'm glad to hear they're listening to the podcast. That's what I'm glad to hear.
I was like, yeah, they got message bulletin board material, but I'll say this, that game was never in question. Like, Tower Hill just came out, you know, playing their style. They played excellent defense. And I think the thing that people are overlooking about Tower is they finally have DJ McClendon healthy, their point guard. They were probably a championship team with him last year, but he got hurt, didn't play in the tournament, and they lost the semifinal at Sanford by 1 point. And he was hurt most of this year. He finally came back in the tournament, and he has played well for them. So he's the guy that allows Dylan and Dean to go off the ball. He's the guy that allows Davis to kind of wander out to the perimeter and get open for shots. So a healthy DJ McClendon makes a world of difference for Tower Hill, and that was on display last night. And I felt like in some respects, Seaford just kind of threw in the towel. I mean, after a while, it just seemed like it was like no game plan, just vibes. And that was very unfortunate because that was the most talented team in the state this year. And they were playing the best ball at the best time. And then it just all went away because Tower Hill just kind of like, you know, took the heart from them. And I was very shocked to see that.
Chris, we're on the same wavelength here because you took my comment away. I was going to say the same thing. Seaford got so frustrated so early in that game. It was like when it was 10-2, you would have thought it was 50-2. That the body language kind of changed, and as you said, they were coming down the lane and just throwing stuff up. It seemed like the offensive game plan, you know, went out the window. It's like falling behind 14-0 in the first quarter of a football game. You're like, you still got a lot of game here to go, and we still got a very talented team. I also felt they kind of sold themselves short. They didn't respond well. It was almost like they thought, you know what, we're a very good team. And they're an exceptional team. They are tremendously talented. And it almost felt like we're going to win this game. We're destined to win this game. And when Tower Hill came out and just shot the lights out, it just seemed to suck the life out of them so quickly. I'm with you. I was very surprised at how quickly they sort of threw the game plan out the window. It seemed like. Now, you know, they've got a great coaching staff. They do a lot of things well, but I was surprised at how quickly that devolved into just kind of throwing up shots and hoping for the best instead of working the ball around and still realizing we got a ton of time to go here.
One of their best players, Brent Rickards, took only 5 shots. And so that's to your point, Marty, of they kind of were not working the ball around. It became more of a, I'm not going to go and say street ball, but it came more of a one pass and let's try to get to the hoop and hope we either get fouled or somebody can grab an offensive rebound. Tyrese Fortune was a young man who unfortunately got hurt in the Tatnall game. He missed the Appoquinimink game. He did play. He got in. He didn't start. But then when things started going bad, he was dressed and ready to go. They put him in. He lasted just 5 minutes. And so, as Coach Trevisan said, it'll be interesting in their strategy. They take tonight with Justin Mullen because a similar situation. And as Trevisan said, you can't put a guy in at this level and have him only be playing 75%. And that, I guess, was probably what was happening with Fortune. And so he came out almost as quick as he came in. They made only 3 of 15 layups. And again, some of those were wild layups you're not going to make, but a layup is a layup. And if it's one you miss, you either shouldn't have taken it or you should have made it.
Chris, I'm curious. I wanted your take on this. How big was Tyrese Fortune not being able to go? How much did that affect this team in the end when they needed a team game?
Well, for him, he was their primary big. He's very slender, but at 6'5", when he's healthy, on the boards, he helps them out a great deal, and he gives them some semblance of a post offense. They couldn't do that because it was obvious, even in warmups, that he was favoring that knee very heavy. It was heavily wrapped. He had an brace on. I had a feeling that when we discussed, Marty, you missed this last week because you weren't feeling well. Glad you're feeling better, by the way.
Thank you.
Me and John discussed that, you don't play a kid like that with, probably getting college attention unless you are very absolutely desperate. Like if you just have to turn to him. And when I saw him warming up, I got the feeling that he's only going to go if they absolutely need him. And they absolutely needed him. And like John said, he literally was just like in like a hockey line change, in, out, in, out, in, out. And then just after a while, Vince Evans just, thought discretion was the better part of valor and just was like, okay, you gave everything you had, but just think of your future. And that's a fair thing to do. But yeah, they suffered without him, offensively, defensively, off the glass. They just were not the same team without him.
And he played just 5 minutes, looking at the stat sheet here. So that's, that's not much at all, barely, not even, a little more than half a quarter. All right, let's talk about tonight's championship game. Get your predictions. Let's go under the assumption that Justin Mullen plays, because I do think, even though Coach Trevisan said they'll be ready, and they will be ready, trust me, Sally's team is never dependent on just one person. Even when Dante DiVincenzo played on that team, they were a good team without Dante. They were a tremendous team with him, but they were a good team when he wasn't in the game as well. And so I'm not saying that if Mullen doesn't play, it flips the game completely, but let's assume that he plays and plays somewhat effectively, plays at 90%, not at 60%, that type of thing. Marty, who you got tonight?
This is a toss-up now for me. I mean, this was, I went back and I was looking at the stats for Sally's and Tower Hill back on February 3rd, which Sally's won by 8 points. They did it primarily based on defense in the first and third quarters, where they held Tower Hill to 15 combined points. I think if Mullen plays and he's healthy, and it's funny, I was almost hoping Coach is sandbagging us when it comes to Justin Mullen. I really hope he plays and he plays at a high level, because I think the schools, the team, basketball deserves it, because he's a great kid and he can really get things done on the court. But if he's out, I'm going with Tower Hill. I just think their discipline on offense and defense on Seaford the other night just kind of blew me away. They were a machine and working the ball around and finding open 3-pointers. Now, they also, as you said, they shot the lights out. Can they do that again? I mean, who knows? Sally's defense is going to be a lot different than the defense that played the other night. Sally's is not going to get out of their game plan early. I think we know from talking to Coach and seeing them across the season, they've played a ton of good teams. They're not going to be intimidated by anything. So if Justin Mullen goes and he's healthy, I think Sally's wins this. I think it is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be within 5 points. I'm hoping it's going to be a phenomenal game, but I have Sally's by somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 points.
If Justin Mullen plays.
If Justin Mullen plays.
Gotcha. Chris, if Justin Mullen plays, what do you think?
I think Sally's wins it. Even if, I'll be honest with you, I like Tower Hill even if Justin is close to healthy, because they played them extremely close the first time around. The only thing that, like Marty said, those first and third quarters just got away from them after a while, and they made up ground. Actually, I think they led in the fourth quarter of that game, but Sally's just pulled it away from them at the end. So Tower Hill can play with Sally's. I feel like if the three guys that showed up majorly for Tower Hill on Thursday do it again tonight, that if they get any semblance of offense from just like any other player, because their secret weapon is a guy named Marty Coyne, and he came up big for them in a double overtime win against Sanford. And I felt like if they gave that kid a little bit more of a shot, they would have, 4 competent scorers. And of course, he scored 11 points against Seaford on Thursday. So if they can get those 4 guys rolling, then Sally's really has to figure out, who to really focus their attention on, because if you focus your attention on one guy, that means there's still 3 others that can hurt you. So I'll hedge my bets here. I'm going to say if Mullen plays, I got Sally's by 3, but if he doesn't, I have Tower Hill by 8.
All righty. So Sally's looking at the Bob Carpenter shooting statistics. Tower Hill shot 10% better than Sally's did from the field. And so, they're going to have to shoot that way again. And that is tough to repeat. Let me just check and make sure I got those stats too. I did almost 10% better. And again, that could be, sometimes that depends on how good your defense is. And they were playing against, a fast, quick Howard defense and a fast, quick Seaford defense. So can't always weigh a whole lot on that. Both teams now have also had the opportunity to play with that depth perception difference and see that. So they'll be a little bit more adjusted to that. I'm hoping Justin Mullen can play at 95%. From what Coach Trevisan said, that sounds like that's going to be a stretch. But you hate to see any championship game come down to if this person had played, it would have been a different story, that type of thing. That being said, I think if Justin Mullen is on the floor, which is going to mean that they're going to have to take one of their bigs to cover him, the rest of the floor opens up a little bit more. Whereas if Justin Mullen is on the bench, that's not the case. And Sally's becomes a little bit easier team to defend. Not a little bit, a lot of it. He's a big part of their offense whenever he's moving around. He can shoot from outside. He can shoot from inside. He gets to the foul line, flashing in and out. And so he's a big part of their offense. So if he can be on the floor, I have the confidence that Sally's will have what it takes to win the game, whether they win it or not. And so I'm going to say that about Mullen. I don't think he needs to be 100%. I think he needs to be on the floor. I think if he's not on the floor, it becomes a much different game. And if Tower Hill can shoot close to what they did in the semifinals, I think they come away with their first state championship in basketball. This is their first trip to the Bob Carpenter Center. By the way, they've never been to the Bob Carpenter Center, which would include the quarterfinals, for the past decade when they were doing it there. And so, their appearances in semifinals were before the Bob was built or before that. So anyway, so it's going to be an interesting game. If Mullen's in the game, I'm going to take Sally's. If he's not in the game at all, I think Tower Hill has a shot to pull this off. And so it will be interesting. It'll be a fun night. Let's hope weather does not impact the game. Again, if you're listening to us, a couple of things. You have to get an electronic ticket if they're still available. I don't even know. I meant to check and I did not. And so don't think you're going to show up, pay cash and get a ticket. You've got to get an electronic ticket. You have to do the daily health check. They are checking that. Very simple. The directions are on the ticket thing. Once you get there for the University of Delaware, take that before you get there. Do yourself a favor. You don't want to be outside hoping to get good internet, trying to complete that. So electronic tickets only, do the daily health check, and keep your eye on social media for any cancellations. Nobody knows what this weather is going to do. Again, we're broadcasting right now. It's 9:38 on Saturday morning. Right now, it's just rain. It's supposed to get colder. It's supposed to do some snow. Could get icier. Remember, you've got 2 teams traveling from North Wilmington, where it could be snowier and icier than where the 3 of us live, which is not in North Wilmington. And so, just keep an eye out for that. Don't assume things on a day like today. All right, let's move on.